My name is Frances Voss. I am 67 years old. This past March, my daughter filed paperwork to borrow $175,000 against my house using my name, and she did not ask me first. She didn't mention it at Christmas. She didn't hint at dinner. She filed the application on a Tuesday in February, and the first I learned of it was 6 weeks later, when a white envelope arrived from Sonoran Title and Trust, addressed to the property owner at 4814 Ocotillo Ridge Drive, Chandler, Arizona. That envelope came to my mailbox because title companies mail preliminary commitments to the property address as a matter of routine. The person living in a house has an interest in knowing what's being reported about it. Standard practice. Nobody did me any favor. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start where it actually started. My husband Walter and I bought the house on Ocotillo Ridge in September of 1990 for $127,500. We were 32 and 34. The realtor said it was a stretch for a two-income family in our bracket, and she was right. We ate a lot of pasta that first winter and called it Italian food, so it felt intentional. Walter died of a heart attack on the 4th of November 2014. He was 61 years old and had never been sick a day in his life, which is the kind of irony that stops being interesting about 3 years in. He was a structural engineer. He worked with precision instruments and taught himself everything through practice, which meant he approached our house like a personal project he never quite finished. There is a lemon tree in the backyard that he planted in 1991 in the wrong spot. It gets too much afternoon sun, the soil drains poorly, and in the 11 years since he died, it has produced the most unreasonably stubborn lemons I have ever seen. Every January it blooms. Every April, lemons, scorched around the edges, smaller than they should be, but there. Every single year. I have been making coffee for one person every morning for 11 years. My daughter Lynette is 42. She has her father's patience with machines and my father's habit of making decisions at full speed and explaining them afterward. She married Kent when she was 25. He is 44 now. He runs an HVAC business out of Tempe that has been in serious trouble since 2022. In February of last year, Lynette came over on a Sunday with a tray of those store-bought cookies that come in the clear plastic clamshell. The kind you bring when you didn't have time to bake but still wanted to show you thought about it. She set them on the kitchen table and pushed them 2 inches toward me and said she and Kent had been talking. About the house, she said. I poured the coffee. About how much equity is just sitting here doing nothing. She kept going. She said the market was good. She said there was a lender who did senior refinance products, which is a phrase that sounds like a service and functions like a conversion. She slid a folder across the table. Cash out refinance, $175,000. She'd already spoken to someone. I asked her who she'd spoken to first. She looked at the folder. That was the first answer I got. His name was Preston. He ran a mortgage brokerage out of a strip mall in Mesa with a sandwich board sign out front that said Senior Home Equity Specialists. Lynette had met him at a community wellness event. She said he was very knowledgeable. She said he understood their situation. Their situation. I asked what their situation was. She said the business had had a hard couple of years. She said they were behind on some things. She said the house had enough equity to give them breathing room while Kent rebuilt the client base, and she'd talked to a lawyer who said there was a way to do it cleanly using the power of attorney I'd signed in 2016. I said, "Tell me about the lawyer." She said it wasn't a full consultation, more of a quick call. 15 minutes just to understand the options. That sentence told me everything. A 15-minute call to understand the options means no one read anything. It means someone found the answer they wanted and stopped listening. Here's what I didn't say that Sunday. In 2016, I had knee surgery scheduled and a husband who had been gone for 2 years and a daughter who lived 40 minutes away. I wanted someone to be able to act if something happened to me, so I signed a durable power of attorney naming Lynette as my attorney, in fact. I recorded it with the Maricopa County Recorder because you have to record it if it's going to touch real property. That's standard practice. That's correct. That's my own signature. What I also didn't say was what I did in the spring of 2021. But I'm not going to tell you that part yet. The order matters. And I didn't do anything that Sunday. I read the first 2 pages of the folder while Lynette watched me. I said I'd think about it. She said, of course, no rush, which is a thing people say when they have already started the clock. She left the folder on my table. Welcome back to Brave Mom Stories, where the women everyone decided were finished get the last careful word. Hit subscribe and drop a comment. I'll see you on the other side of this one. I want to tell you about the house before I tell you about the paperwork, because the paperwork is just the mechanism. The house is the reason any of it mattered. Walter built the back deck with reclaimed wood from a demolition site in Scottsdale. He installed the kitchen cabinets himself over one long July 4th weekend and got one door slightly crooked, a 1/4 inch off on the hinge, and for 24 years I told him it bothered me, and for 24 years he said he'd fix it, and he never did. I have not touched that door. It hangs exactly as he left it. In the garage, his workbench is still against the east wall. Red Craftsman tool chest, 1988, the kind they stopped making. Every drawer labeled in his handwriting with a label maker he bought at a hardware store that closed in 2003. The label maker is still in the top left drawer. It still works. I checked last April when I needed the wrench underneath it. I have slept in the back bedroom of that house for 34 years. When Lynette had the house appraised in March, which happens as a matter of course when you apply for a cash-out loan, I got a call from the appraisal company asking to schedule access. I said yes. I opened the door for a man with a clipboard and a phone camera who walked through every room in 40 minutes, measured the garage, photographed Walter's workbench twice because it was, he said, a nice original feature. I made coffee while he worked. I did not cry. I want to be clear about that. Here's what I did for a living before I retired, and I tell you this now because of what comes later. My father died when I was 19. No savings, no life insurance, 2 younger brothers. I couldn't go to college that fall. I took a job as a file clerk at a savings and loan on Central Avenue in Phoenix. My job was to pull loan files from the cabinet, hand them to the officers, and put them back. I put them back, and then I started reading them. In 1984, I transferred to Valley Federal Bank. In 1991, the same year we moved into Ocotillo Ridge, I became a loan processor. In 2001, senior loan processor. I retired in December of 2017 after 24 years in that role. Over the course of my career, I processed somewhere north of 11,000 mortgage transactions. Refinances, purchases, HELOCs, modifications. I sat across from people on the worst days of their financial lives, and I read every page of every document that came through my desk. Remember that. It matters later, but not for the reason you think. Here is what my daughter thinks I did for a living. 2 Thanksgivings ago, Kent told someone at the table that his mother-in-law used to work at a bank. He said it the way you'd say she used to volunteer at the library. Like it was a pleasant, uncomplicated thing that required nothing in particular. I was sitting 6 feet away. He had applied for a loan using my name, and he did not know what I had spent 24 years doing, and he had never once thought to ask. You cannot take something from a person you have been genuinely paying attention to. I want to tell you why I didn't simply say no in February. There are 2 reasons. The first is practical, and it has a name. Her name is Hazel Portman. She's 72. We've known each other from church in Tempe for going on 9 years. In 2022, Hazel's son decided she was making poor financial decisions and filed a petition for guardianship of person and estate with the Maricopa County Superior Court after one difficult phone call between them. I read the petition at her kitchen table. 2 of the paragraphs were about that phone call. Threatening language. Emotionally dysregulated. Unable to accept appropriate family guidance. She spent $28,000 on an attorney. She kept her accounts. She also stopped coming to the Wednesday morning coffee group at church, and something in her voice went careful in a way it hadn't been before. After Lynette's Sunday visit, I called an elder law attorney named Rhea Costello on Camelback Road. She's 58, no nonsense, charges by the 6-minute increment. I told her everything. I asked her what I should do. She said, "Frances, if you fight your daughter at your kitchen table, you lose. Not because you're wrong, because the kitchen is her room. Anything you do there becomes evidence of your state of mind. Pick a room where the only thing that matters is what's written in the record." I said I knew exactly the room. She said she thought I might. The second reason I didn't say no in February is the one I'd rather not say into a microphone, but this whole story falls apart if I'm not honest. I was waiting for Lynette to stop on her own. Every single day of those 8 weeks, I woke up and thought, today is the day she pulls into the driveway and comes up the porch steps and says, "Mom, I got carried away." That's all it would have taken. One sentence at my door, and I'd have made her coffee, and we would never have spoken of it again. I hadn't finished hoping yet. That's the honest answer. On a Tuesday in April, I drove to 111 South 3rd Avenue in downtown Phoenix. The Maricopa County Recorder's Office is on the first floor of a building that fills up by 8:30 in the morning. You take a number, you sit in a molded plastic chair, you wait for the board to blink. There's a public terminal anyone can use, a contractor checking a lien, a college student tracing an inheritance, a complete stranger. You walk in off the street and you ask for the grantor-grantee index and you search a name. It cost me 2 hours and a parking garage ticket. I searched Voss Frances M. The screen gave me the usual archaeology of one house over 3 decades. The 1990 purchase deed. The 1997 refinance. Reconveyances. Property easements from the utility company. But there were 2 entries I already knew were there because I put them there myself. The first was the 2016 power of attorney, recorded as required. The second was document number 2021-0583914, recorded April 22, 2021 at 9:14 in the morning, revocation of durable power of attorney. 3 paragraphs. It says the power of attorney I executed and recorded in 2016, naming Lynette A. Burnham as my attorney, in fact, is revoked in its entirety. It says any person dealing with the property described herein is on notice. 4 years. That document had been sitting in the public index for 4 years, under my name and under hers, available to anyone who walked in and typed either one. The clerk printed me a certified copy for $7. She stamped it with a raised seal. I folded it in thirds, put it in my purse, and drove home the long way, down Chandler Boulevard, past the hospital, where Walter had the procedure they said went fine until it didn't. I already knew what I'd find in that index. I'll tell you why the revocation exists. In the summer of 2021, I received a letter from a lender in Scottsdale, thanking me for my interest in a home equity line of credit in the amount of $95,000. I had not applied for anything. Lynette had used the 2016 power of attorney. She signed my name with the 4 legal words after it and submitted an application in my name. The application died in underwriting. Not because anyone caught her, because the lender ran a preliminary title search and their processor sent a 2-line message saying they were unable to proceed due to a title issue unrelated to the POA. The loan never funded. Lynette mentioned it to me later, annoyed, saying the lender was disorganized. She never once said she had applied. I found out from their letter. I went to the recorder's office in April of 2021 and paid to record 3 paragraphs. Then I mailed Lynette a certified copy, return receipt requested, because that is how a person who spent 24 years in mortgage banking says something she needs to be able to prove later. The green card came back 8 days later. There is a signature in the delivery box. I kept it in the hall closet in a manila envelope behind the spare linens. It's been there ever since. My granddaughter, Kyra, is 21. She's a junior at ASU studying political science, works 20 hours a week at an insurance claims office in Tempe, and she is the only person in my family who looks at a thing and then asks about the actual thing. She came by on a Wednesday in April with 2 iced coffees from the Dutch Bros on Ray Road, and she stood on my porch and did not come in. She had already seen it. Her mother had posted something on Instagram, a photo of my backyard with the caption, "Exciting changes coming," and 2 heart emojis. "Grandma," she said, "what is my mother doing?" I told her. She sat down on the porch, step in her work clothes, and cried. The quiet kind that comes from somewhere specific. She said she'd asked her mother directly, and her mother told her to stay out of family finances. She said she'd come to the signing and make a scene. I said no. I told her what I meant. If she walked into that room and made a scene, everyone present would pick the version of the story easiest to believe about a 67-year-old widow. She said, "So you're just going to let them?" I said, "I'm going to let them get all the way to the end." She looked at me the way 21-year-olds look at you when they think you might be making a mistake but aren't sure enough to say so. Then she said okay. Then she said she'd bring me iced coffee every week until it was over. She did, every Wednesday. That girl has never once talked about me in the third person while I was standing in the room. Stay with me. What happens at the signing is the whole reason I'm telling you this. If this is landing close to home, take a second, hit subscribe, and tell me in the comments who made decisions about your life while you were still in the room. The white envelope from Sonoran Title and Trust arrived on a Saturday morning in early May. I was listed as property owner. It came to my mailbox because it goes to every property owner's mailbox on every transaction in this country. Nobody arranged it. Preliminary title commitment. Order number ST 2025-4471, 14 pages. Legal description on page 3 that I know by heart. The exceptions section. Property taxes, a utility easement from 1978, standard items. And then exception 6. I sat down on the arm of the couch and read exception 6 4 times. Then I laughed once, quietly, because it had been sitting there the whole time. That commitment went out by email to Preston, to the lender's processor, and to Lynette. At least 3 adults received it before I did. I know what most people do with a 14-page title commitment that arrives in their inbox on a weekday. They forward it. They skim the cover sheet. They assume somebody else is reading the exceptions, because the exceptions are where the boring words live, and everybody trusts that someone downstream is handling the boring words. Nobody had called me. Nobody had asked me to clear anything. I also knew that on the morning of the loan signing, the title company would run a bring-down search. A bring-down is the last look. Before a title company insures anything, an examiner pulls the chain of title current, right up to that morning, to confirm nothing new has landed in the record since the preliminary commitment. New liens, new deeds, new encumbrances, anything. It is the most routine thing in the American mortgage system. It happens on every transaction, every business day, and nobody thanks anyone for it. I put the commitment in the manila envelope in the closet. I put the certified copy of the revocation on top. I put the green card on top of that. The signing was scheduled for a Thursday at 2 in the afternoon at Sonoran Title and Trust on Dobson Road. The night before, I took my good silk blouse out of the closet and ironed it. I hadn't ironed it since Walter's funeral. I set out my good shoes. I put my driver's license in the outside pocket of my purse so I wouldn't be searching for it at a table full of people. If you have ever ironed a blouse for a room where someone expected you to be furniture, you know exactly what I was doing at that ironing board at 9:30 at night. I called Rhea that evening. She told me she permits 2 after-hours calls per client. I told her the title company wanted me in person. They'd said they needed the property owner present for the homeowner's acknowledgement. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You understand what they're going to find Thursday morning." I said they'd run the bring-down. She said the exception from the preliminary is still open. Nobody's cleared it. Nobody's asked you to clear it. I said nobody's called me at all. She asked if I wanted her there. I said no. I said it for a reason. If my attorney walks into that room, this becomes Francis Voss's lawyer making a play. If I walk in alone with my license and my purse, it's just a woman sitting at a table while a title company does its job. The record doesn't need an advocate. That's the whole point of a record. Rhea said, "Don't explain anything. Don't help them. They'll get there." I said I had no intention of helping. I put 2 certified copies in my purse, folded in thirds with the raised seal. I put my license in the outside pocket. I left Walter's Craftsman label maker in the top drawer of his workbench where it belongs. I slept maybe 3 hours. At 5:30, I got up and made coffee and stood at the kitchen window and watched the desert light come up over a yard that at least 3 people had already decided what to do with. I thought, today they find out what I signed and what I revoked. Sonoran Title and Trust is in a low beige office park off Dobson Road, 2nd floor, above a tax preparation service. The conference room has a round table, a pitcher of water with cucumber slices, and a box of tissues in the center because they know. I arrived at 1:40. I sat at the table with my purse in my lap. Lynette came in first with a travel mug and her phone face up on the table. She looked at me and said, "You're here." Not a question. Slightly off balance. She had been told I was signing some property owner disclosures, routine. 10 minutes. Kent came in after her, with 2 pens and the energy of a man who has already spent the money in his head. He said, "Francis, good to see you," which is a thing you say when you have decided the other person has agreed to something they have not agreed to. Preston arrived with a folder and a handshake, and the confident warmth of a man who had completed this transaction 100 times in his own mind. The settlement agent, a woman named Andrea, who was maybe 35, came in with a rolling cart and a stack of documents. She checked IDs. She confirmed the loan amount. She said she was waiting for confirmation from the title officer before they began. 2 minutes later, the door opened. The woman who came in was maybe 30. Lanyard, hair pulled back, a pen behind her ear, and a printout with a green sticky note on the top page. She pulled out a chair. She said, "I'm Sonia Rayburn. I'm the title examiner on this file, and I need to walk everyone through the chain of title before we proceed." Kent said, "Is there a problem?" She said, "There's a history." She put the printout on the table and turned the top page so it faced the middle. Then she read it the way I used to read payoff statements in the back office at Valley Federal. Not dramatically, just accurately. September 14, 1990, grant deed. Walter R. Voss and Francis M. Voss, husband and wife, as community property. That's the purchase. Refinance 1997, reconveyed 2012. Standard. Then she turned to the page with the green sticky note. December 8, 2016. Durable Power of Attorney, document number 2016-10428887. Francis M. Voss, grantor. Lynette A. Burnham, attorney in fact. Lynette nodded. Sonia looked at the next page. "There is a subsequent instrument recorded against that document," she said. April 20, 2021. Document number 2021-0583914. Revocation of Durable Power of Attorney. Preston said, "That's not right." Sonia said, "It's recorded." She turned the page so the room could see the raised seal. "It revokes the 2016 instrument in its entirety," she said. "Any person dealing with this property is on notice. It has been in the public index for 4 years. It's indexed under both names." Kent said, "What does that mean for the loan?" Sonia said, "It means the loan application was signed by someone without legal authority to sign it. The power of attorney used on the application was revoked before this transaction began. I cannot clear Exception 6 on this commitment, and without clearing it, we cannot issue a title policy. Without a policy, the lender will not fund." Preston said, "With respect, surely there's a way to—" Sonia said, "Only the property owner can clear it, voluntarily." Everyone in that room turned and looked at me at the same time. 6 faces. I opened my purse. I took out the preliminary commitment, still folded in thirds, and set it on the table. Exception 6 was visible at the top of the fold. Then I took out the certified copy of the revocation with the raised seal and set it beside it. Then I took out the green card. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. Addressed to Lynette A. Burnham at her home address in Tempe. Postmarked April 30, 2021. The signature in the delivery box is Lynette's handwriting. I have known her handwriting since she was 8 years old, learning cursive at my kitchen table. Lynette looked at the green card. She looked at it for a long time. She said, "Mom." I said, "I mailed you a copy 4 years ago." She said, "I don't remember that." I said, "Your signature is on the card." She didn't say anything after that. Kent stood up. He said this was a misunderstanding. He said we could work it out as a family. He said, "Francis, we've been trying to help you. You can't just sit on $400,000 of equity while we're—" He stopped himself. "While we're what?" I thought. "Finish the sentence, Kent. Say it out loud in this room in front of this woman, with the printout and the green sticky note." He sat back down. Sonia was still working. That is what I want you to understand about people who do their job correctly. The emotional weather in the room does not change the checklist. She said there was one more item. She said the signature on the original loan application listed the signing party as Francis M. Voss by Lynette A. Burnham, attorney in fact. Given that the power of attorney was revoked prior to this application, she was obligated to note that the loan originated on the basis of an instrument that was not valid at the time of signing. Preston said he was not aware of any revocation. Sonia said it has been public record for 4 years. Then she said the sentence that ended the transaction. The lender cannot fund on a loan application with a defective authorization. I need to contact them directly. She stepped out. She was gone 4 minutes. When she came back, she said the lender had withdrawn the loan. Preston gathered his folder. He said he was sorry, that clearly there had been a miscommunication, that he hoped the family could work it out. He shook my hand on the way out. He shook my hand. He had no real idea what had just happened, and that was the strangest part of the whole morning. Andrea, the settlement agent, said she was sorry for everyone's time. Kent walked out without looking at me. Lynette stayed. She sat at that round table after the others left and looked at her hands the way people do when they're searching for a version of events that makes them less responsible for it. She said, "You planned this." I said, "I went to the recorder's office and paid $7 for a copy of something I filed 4 years ago. That's the whole plan." She said, "You could have just told me no." I said, "I did tell you no, in 2021, in a certified letter with a raised seal. You signed for it." She didn't have an answer for that. I didn't wait for one. I picked up my purse. I put my license back in the outside pocket. I said good afternoon to Sonia on the way out. I walked through the office park to the parking lot, and I sat in my car for about 5 minutes before I could get the key in the ignition. Here is what it cost in actual numbers, because feelings are hard to audit. Preston's brokerage had charged a $750 processing fee up front, which Lynette had paid. 10 days later, I wrote her a check for that amount, not because I owed it to her, because the fee was charged to start a transaction that should never have been started. And she is still my daughter, and some things you do because of what you are, not because of what someone else did. I filed a complaint with the Arizona Department of Financial Institutions regarding the brokerage, not for the loan itself, which collapsed through the ordinary workings of the title process, but for processing an application on the basis of a power of attorney without first verifying its current status at the recording office, which takes approximately 6 minutes and costs nothing. I went back to the Maricopa County Recorder's Office in July and filed a declaration of homestead on the property. I changed the locks. I signed a new power of attorney, naming Kyra as my attorney in fact, recorded and certified. Lynette and I speak once or twice a month now. She has not apologized, and I've stopped waiting for it, the way I stopped waiting for her to come to my door that spring. Kent's business filed for Chapter 7 in August. That is not something I caused, and it is not something I could have stopped. Walter's lemon tree is still in the wrong spot in the backyard. I pruned it back in September the way I do every year, and in January it bloomed exactly as it always does. Slightly scorched, leaning a little east, more productive than it has any right to be given where he put it, and what the soil is like, and how relentlessly hot a Chandler afternoon gets in July. He planted it wrong, and it grows anyway, every single year. People keep telling me I outsmarted my daughter. I want to be very precise about this, because somebody listening right now is running the same arithmetic on their own house. There was no trick. There was a public counter, a $7 certified copy, and an index that had been open to anyone for 4 years. Every person in my family could have walked in on any Tuesday and typed either of our names. One woman with a green sticky note did it on a Thursday morning because that is her job. The only wisdom I have fits in one line. They can decide what you are in every room, but the one where someone reads the record out loud. So go find out what your record actually says while you still have the choosing of it. It costs less than a tank of gas. It takes less than an afternoon. And the person who most needs to know what's on that deed to your home is you. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.